going back to the basics, it's all the way from our board to our CEO to the last employee to just joined the company. If it's not like that, you more than probably will miss and do some errors along the way.
It's not like the video tutorials where you can just press skip and then you get actually print those report cards of all the tutorials that I've done. I have like 10 of them behind my station.
10, it's nothing.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yuval, and you're listening to YAAP Podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Rony Shalit, Chief Compliance and Ethics Officer at BrightData, about responsible data collection and how to do it ethically. Hi, Rony.
Hey.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm speaking with a lot of developers, a lot of people who work with AI products, and it's a lot of conversation about AI agents or which code should I write here, which framework should I do. And every time, in every conversation, the most important thing that keeps rising up is the data. Right? There is some sort of a consensus that the data is the most important ingredient in every AI system. Do you agree?
I think it's the most interesting part, at least from my perspective. Every AI system has three different points or aspects to look at. One will be the compute, the chips that we know, and NVIDIA and all that discussion. The other will be the smart people that write the algorithm. And we see a lot of headlines regarding that and the big tech trying to snap on from the other. And the third part is the data. And the data is a huge pool that's almost never ending. During this podcast, there'll be so much more data consumed and added to the web. So definitely data is one of the most interesting part.
Can you give some estimation? During this 1 hour that we're recording the podcast, how much data will be in the web right now?
I don't recall the exact numbers the last time I checked, but when we're talking about videos that's being uploaded in the millions every hour, obviously text, and I can see from what we see in BrightData, the scale of data collection, and it's been that way even before AI, and it's obviously it's getting bigger and bigger. But BrightData today has more requests going through a system than all the search engines combined in a single day, more than Google, more than any other, with petabytes of data running through our systems on a daily basis.
With what? Sorry?
Petabytes, yeah.
That's bigger than...
It's, I think, 17 zeros, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a lot of zeros.
Yeah, it's... maybe I'm mistaken, but it's huge amounts of data going on a daily basis. And AI is a big contributor to that, obviously, but data collection has been exist for a long time.
So you've mentioned BrightData and data collection. Let's maybe just introduce briefly BrightData and what do you do there?
Oh, sure. So BrightData is a data collection platform. We've been around for the last decade, so we're not a new company. Worldwide, serving over 20,000 customers from all different industries, from finance to e-commerce, travel, security, and obviously AI. And we've been doing so at large scale, providing our customers either with tools to have access to the data, to collect the data itself, or if they need data, just the data itself, and don't know how to collect it themselves, we will do it for them and share the data itself on a one-time basis, a routine basis, whatever is needed. We've been acquired in 2017 by a UK private equity firm. And we are about 450 people worldwide today. My role specifically is something that has been part of BrightData since the company started, really emphasizing the need for compliance and ethics. And by the way, it's not because everyone was so compliance-oriented, but because you make mistakes when you start and you understand what is important and how you do risk management when it comes to those complicated areas, especially in the data collection realm where there's little to no regulation. And today we are over 10 people worldwide dealing just with data compliance and ethics, which is unparalleled to any company of our industry, but even for larger companies worldwide. I've worked with that type of companies in the past. Having so many people dealing with compliance is unusual, but that's just because we understand the importance of it and the importance of this issue to our customers.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify and state directly, this is not a philosophy type of episode, right? And unless you really want to talk about moral philosophy or those type of things. And really, when you talk about compliance and ethics, as a former developer, and I have a lot of developer friends, every time we hear the word ethics, it usually connects to something that is, like a mandatory course you had to do, and like just do the exam and finish with that, or something like that. And you may think to yourself, well, who cares? I'm not an enterprise. I'm not a big pharmaceutical company. Who cares about compliance, right? I'm guessing you hear those type of things a lot.
Definitely. And when I joined ByData, my question was, who is dealing with the legal part, with all the long documents and everything that need to check the box, that just to make sure, yes, we did that training, or we provided that information and someone read it, more or less, and let's move forward.
And you found out that
it's not me.
It's not you.
It's not me. That was the important part. It's not me. I think unlike any compliance department, we are hands-on within the product itself. We have to be, because we meet customers, we verify customers on a daily basis, we investigate. My team needs to be very familiar with both our customers' use cases, which are a challenge for us on a daily basis, but also with our tools and products, to make sure to align the right access rights and provide the right support in order for them to do what they need to do. So the name might be misleading, compliance and ethics, but the bottom line is how to protect your product from different angles, and definitely compliance is one of them, especially in an unregulated area, especially nowadays with those recent developments that we have on a daily basis.
And ByData famously, I think it's already, both of the cases are closed, right? Both with Meta and with X.
The important thing is we've been challenged. We didn't stop scraping at any time until this day, because we believe in publicly available web data and the access to web data. That's the largest database mankind has ever had. And blocking access to it will affect each and every one of us on a very personal level. You might not know it or understand how deep it goes, but that is actually the case, and we'll give different examples later on.
Yeah. So just maybe align everybody and set the stage for all the things that are about to come. You've mentioned scraping, you mentioned data collection, we know there's crawling. What's the difference?
Basically, I think the main two aspects of data collection or the usage of data, whether it will be for AI systems or any other usage, is the fact, and this is one of the misconceptions, or at least how even regulators mix things, is separating between the data collection part and the data usage. And those are completely different, because we provide and we are focused on the data collection, meaning getting access to the data, getting it scraped or collected, whatever name you want, harvested, different names, same thing. And the goal is to, how do you do it in a responsible way? How do you do it without harming the website or degrading its performance or anything of that sort? So that is the main thing. And again, crawling, scraping, parsing, it's sort of a middle ground between the two. And then there's the usage. And this part was also discussed in our court cases, but also in other famous court cases that are still being handled these days. So I think that's the main difference we need to keep in mind. There are a lot of issues about the usage, many issues, and a lot more regulation regarding the usage.
When you say usage, for instance, training a model is usage, or only through inference time, or
any type of usage that you do. Training, I think it's a bit more, it definitely is a usage, but a lot of the times the pushback will be regarding, and there's a lot of pushback. We shouldn't ignore that. Yeah, that's the main issue. Domains don't want to be scraped, but we believe they should be allowed access to publicly available data, depending on which data and how you do it. That's the main focus. But training is definitely one usage, which I think in the last court cases was more, it's getting clearer and clearer that training the model is okay if it's based on publicly available data. The outcome of that training, if you reproduce the same picture or text, that's a whole different issue. That's where more copyrights comes into place and other regulation as well. So yeah, definitely training is part of usage.
Cool. And maybe just to spark some interest, or really to make sure that maybe even I understand, if I don't work in a big company, something like that, maybe I'm just developing like stuff on my own during the weekend, I can just, scrape things from the internet. Like, why do I care about responsible use? Or why should I take the time and understand what is ethical and responsible data collection?
So basically, it depends on the scale that you're doing things. If you're looking for your next apartment and you want to collect some specific apartment information just to get notified because whatever real estate or billboard didn't set up the notification the way you want it, you can do it. It's not something that should harm or disturb anyone online. But if you'll try to do it, you'll probably get some issues. One of them that you'll get blocked, depending on the IP that you're using. So you'll need a better IP or more less detectable IP. So it would look like you're coming from a data center that is well known and you're not behaving like a human being, like a person. Then you'll need different tools. So getting an IP is one thing, and already there you have the question, how did my vendor or the one buy data for that instance, how do they get those IPs that I'm going to use? And there are different ways. We see, again and again, different types of malware that provide some backdoor to users' IPs and some other bad behaving IP sourcing. So that's one thing. The next step will be you'll get blocked by the website just because you don't know how to scrape the data as well. In most cases, you will have some sort, it can be a CAPTCHA, it can be some Cloudflare block, it could be some other means in order to protect the site from malicious bots, which is perfectly fine and legitimate. In order to pass those bots, you need to have some more technology or experience on how to do it. And we are the masters at that. This is what we do, basically. And I think it's an important point to make that overcoming those technical barriers in terms of CAPTCHA and those kind of things is perfectly legitimate. Has been also discussed in court. It might sound as if it will be easy to find that data. It's not. It's
there's
uncharted area.
A lot of data in the sea, but it's not easy to navigate that sea.
Exactly. Back in the days, we have someone go to our home and put a big book on our doorstep with
book.
Yellow pages, yes, which today would be a critical privacy issue. Just sending everyone my phone and name and address to everyone who wants it. So if you don't have that phone book and you're just trying to find different numbers to dial, you might be able to do so. In a lot of cases, you won't get anywhere. And just multiply it by billions in amount of different URLs and the data that's out there. So you can start by doing your own scraping, but it will get harder very fast.
So Rony, you've mentioned the phone book, right? Or the guide or all the URLs. We talked about data collection. Now let's talk in practice. How does it look like?
Coming from a non-code perspective, okay, I'm not a developer. I haven't written a single line of code in my life.
Most developers these days only write prompts, so we're in good company.
I totally understand it, and we now have an AI writing scripts for scraping. So definitely that's the case. First of all, I think it's important to understand the supply chain that you have regarding data. So it's all the way from the issuer or the publisher of the data. And I'm trying to be very careful because in some cases, the data itself will be published by someone who doesn't own the rights or even stole it or anything of that sort. Copyrighted books or stolen copyrighted books and those kind of things are a great example for that. And there's a lot of databases for this. Same thing with movies or videos and so on. And then you have the data collection part, which can be done by a third party, by a data vendor like BuyData, or can be done by the companies themselves if they know how to write the script and they know how to do it the best way possible. Then you have the data usage, and again, different use cases from AI, e-commerce, and others. And then there's an output for us as the user. It can be a user of an AI system, which basically, on one end, we don't care about that end, but because AI systems, we also input data within the system is also a part, but it's not relevant to data collection, but it's also part of the data supply chain that we have. And I think throughout this supply chain, it's important to make sure that you, working in a regulatory framework that can support your activities, obviously not doing anything illegal. And in some cases, it can be very simple to distinguish the two. If you're scraping some torrent website for whatever videos that have been bootlegged from somewhere, you're doing something wrong. It might be funny, but there are cases where companies are doing so, whether they know it or they don't know it. The Anthropic case, I think it's a good example.
The Anthropic case was on books,
on
right?
books, yeah, but they used stolen books database as part of their training. I think it's an interesting case where the court decided that training on books, it's okay. But if you're doing it on illegal obtained data, or in that case books, that's a whole different story. And that part will continue in court, and we'll see the outcomes. And this is for us, obviously, been one of the basic building stones that you can't do anything illegal or scrape anything illegal. Or if your intent is to scrape in order to copy it, to create the same website, just, do a better SEO, we won't support it.
But you mentioned illegal a lot. Where it seems that, there is a clear illegal and clear green light, but there's a whole lot of gray area in the middle, I guess.
Yeah.
Can you maybe share some examples with real use cases, real clients, real data?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first one, the first thing to remember is what we mentioned before, the public versus non-public data. This is something that I can't stress strong enough in terms of how critical it is in the process. And I think it's one of the key, I don't know if it's a misconception, but definitely key arguments that we see from customers, that if I have a license to that website, I have credentials, I've paid for that website, it can be, let's say, a news website, so I can scrape the data. I paid for it, so I can take it and do whatever I want with it. And that's not the case.
Because it's not matching to what you said before about the paywall or everything you can go from incognito, right?
Exactly. But even though that's the case, customers, and we see there's also cases out there that will do it differently. And from their point of view, that data is still available to me because I bought that license. Or a different case would be we see government domains that will provide information to anyone. Okay, it's something that is critical for all of us, and in many cases it's even lacking more data. If the government would have published more data about accidents, about roads, about different issues, there's a lot of things that can be done with it. So governments do publish information, statistical data, and so on. And in a lot of the cases, it will be available for anyone, but you can also log in to the website in order to do different activities with your account. And you will see the same data without the login and with the login. seems pretty straightforward in terms of, okay, I can do it because the data is also available without a login.
I would say that obviously I can.
You can get the data, but you need to remember that if you do it while log in, you have an added risk, which is because in most cases, when you do sign up to any system, you need to approve the terms and conditions. Once you do that, there is more legal responsibility, and you actually went into a contract with that platform. And maybe the terms and conditions allows you to do it. And a lot of government domains will say, it's okay, just we are not responsible for any information. So a disclaimer, check the data after you got it, but wouldn't say anything about bot or anything of that sort. Maybe. I think because we are talking to developers and others, that shouldn't be the case. If you're going into the terms and conditions of your sign-up process, which we know a lot of developers and people in different companies will sign up to different services, not ask anyone about it, just because they want to try it, they want to see, they want to test it. If you need your legal advisor to go and check the terms and conditions, I don't think that's a good place for you to start with. So going back to the publicly available data, that is definitely one of the key aspects, even if the same data is represented without a login and with a login. Same case when we are talking about different methods to prevent harming the website in any way. Again, talking about the supply chain, you can use a vendor like Buy Data and have our own policies and procedure regarding that on how to do it in the best way. You shouldn't be in a place where you say, okay, I'll get the data. I don't care about the website. I'll hit 1 million requests per second or per minute, and it will be okay. That might be the case for a very large international web domain. But if you're trying to scrape some WordPress blog or something is not ready to that for this scale, you will shut it down. It won't be able to handle the load, and this is something that we not just that we don't want to be part of as a use case. We invest heavily in making sure that doesn't happen to our systems.
So we're not even talking about how legal it is to get the data, but actually how those websites will continue to remain live and work properly.
That is definitely one of the aspects. I would say also that two of the main regulations when it comes to data collection will be copyright and privacy. And both of those aspects need to be considered as well, just because, again, at the end user point of view. So if you're the one saying, okay, I want this data from that website, you need to know or you need to check what's the data, what data you have there, in order to make sure that you don't that you're in compliance with privacy and copyright regulations. Some of it is more clear based on past rulings and so on. Some, again, it's in the gray area, which just has been discussed just recently and will be in discussions for, I guess, at least a couple more years.
So you've mentioned some best practices or really how to do it. I'm guessing nobody really wants to go and read all the terms and conditions. I now want to scrape some data. I want to do it responsibly.
So I think the most important part is knowing how you collecting that data, and that can be based on what you decide, or if you're using a third party to get you that data. And this is something that we get a lot of questions on as well, because when we sell a data set, for example, that's one thing, but our customers will ask, okay, where did you get this data? How is it compliant with A, B, and C, and so on? And when we have full control, it's very easy for us because we know what we did and how we did it. When it comes to our customers, we validate each and every use case. We actually have a know your customer process that we want to know in order to validate who you are and what you want to do. One of the reasons that we do that is because we act in full transparency. And I think this is a key aspect for anyone who's doing scraping. So, and I would even call it radical transparency. If you're using public data, if your intentions are good, okay, and you don't mean to harm anyone, it's perfectly fine to say exactly where you got that data, at what time, what URLs, whether that data was public or not public at that specific point, and have that transparency and logs in order to be shared on later instance with a customer, or maybe even different regulations that will be a year from now, but you'll already have that in place. In order to do that, it shouldn't be a compliance officer role or a legal advisor. It goes back to the DNA of the company or the DNA of whatever organization you're working with. I can't stop a developer from doing something bad. I can only teach them with real examples, with very easy to distinguish tools between what we want to support and what we don't want to support. And I think one good example for that is we have a tool that collects search results. I remember a case where I got a ping from a developer saying, hey, look at that request from a customer. They had some bug, some issue with some search query. I'm not going to handle it. And I said, why not? And because the query itself had something related to child abuse or adult content with pedophile content and so on. Just the query itself. Nothing about, no images, nothing. In order to get to the point where a developer would say, I don't want to do that, and I know who to reach out to, and to have knowing the support, because it's not about, usually it's about product, sales, customer service. Those are the main things. And the tension, by the way, exists also in dry data. But the thing is, if this is really a core principle for you, that you understand how to separate the two, or when to raise the flag, to ask the right questions, this is where me and my department comes into place and decide. And I'm happy to say that each and every one of our customers is in full communication with us. So when we reach out to a customer saying, hey, we saw this, hey, we saw maybe high scale of targeting on a website, we blocked your access until we understand what you're doing. In all cases, we get full communication, we get explanations, and we usually also get a thank you, because we see some errors within a script that our customer didn't intend for it to do from the get-go. So getting that core principles, that DNA, I think it's a very critical part from day one. This is a critical issue. It can make or break a company, and it's not a theoretical phrase. We have different data providers, even the last year, that scraped LinkedIn unethically, and they got shut down because of a lawsuit by LinkedIn. Most of the companies can handle those lawsuits. They're very expensive. Our goal is to protect our customers, our network, but also the World Wide Web. Most of what we do is not regulated, so it needs to align to our policies and best practices. The easy way out would have been to say, okay, we'll not publish any Instagram data sets and those kind of things. But we chose to fight those fights.
Not very cheap fights, I imagine.
Not at all. Not at all. It was cheaper than we expected at the end, because the ruling came much sooner, basically throwing Meta out, saying you have nothing to hold on to, because their case was, I don't know if you're jumping ahead a little bit, but basically the case was, we had an Instagram account and a Facebook account of the company, to publish HR events and those kind of things. And then their claim was, because you had an account, you were obligated by the terms, and that's why doing the scraping was against the terms, and you need to compensate us. And
like you said before on the government websites, that if you have a user, you don't have a user. Yes.
The thing is, mixing the two aspects of our HR Instagram account and our scraping activity, those two has nothing to do with one another. None of our scraping is done using any account whatsoever, not when we do the scraping, and neither by our customers. We don't approve of that, and you don't need it. That's the more easier part. You don't need an account. And when you try to change it and say, okay, so how do you know it's only publicly available data? We're able to showcase different cases, our KYC process. So how do you know that you can't do login scraping in one of your tools? We have a tool called Web Unlocker. So how do you know that it's not used? Because we blocked it by default. You can't do login. You can interact with the page in order to do so. And it takes a lot of resources, a lot of technology, a lot of development to have those tools in a robust environment that really can support our policies and procedures. By the way, it also adds a lot of friction with customers when they get blocked, where they can't get to a website they're trying to get because we blocked them. We classify over 30 billion domains worldwide, and we don't allow access to all of them. Going back to the government domains are blocked by default in by data. Why? Because there are more riskier, there are more targets of DDoS attack and those kind of things. We want to make sure that if you're going to a governmental website, we know what you want to do and we can verify who you are. Friction, which goes against, if there are any product or salespeople here, they don't like it.
I can imagine. It sounds very frustrating that my unlocker does not unlock everything. But yeah, I can understand. Like, there's a risk. You don't really want to take that risk, and makes a lot of sense. So
when you try it first, okay, and you get the block, you might switch to a different vendor. Okay, that might happen. We know that. That is a risk that we are willing to take. And more than that, if we find out that someone has been doing something that might be suspicious, and we reach out and communicate with them, and then they don't cooperate, the numbers behind that account, okay, whatever revenue there is, means nothing. And I've shut down 7 figures accounts in Bright Data, okay, because of not communicating, not cooperating with our compliance. We ask questions, we want to know, and not everybody want to share, even if you're doing something good. There's a saying in the dark web where a lot of proxies being looked for and so on. If you wanna have a good proxy system, go to Bright Data. If you want a no questions asked approach, stay away from Bright Data, and that's okay. If you're doing something that you're not ready to be transparent about it, that we can support, that's okay. We don't need that kind of business. And by the way, it's probably be a bad starting point for you because you may be doing something that will end up being very, very bad. We see it from investors. They don't want to play in that realm if there's something fishy. We see it with the customers. When a US bank comes to you and wants to use you as a data vendor, they will strip you down in order to make sure that you follow, because as you mentioned before, a lot of regulation on the financial sector. So we need to be ready for that, and we are the vendor of choice. So choose your vendors wisely and see who's the right fit for you on the long run.
Rony, you've mentioned lawsuits, you've mentioned regulations, and I think there are 2 things that at least are interesting for me. First of all, I don't want to get a lawsuit. Right? I don't want to stand in court and defend on whatever data things that I've did. And the second thing is the regulation part, right? We know that it's still not highly regulated. There's interviews with OpenAI when they first really were on top of that. Like, they really encouraged the US government to regulate things, and now they really want to take a step back because they're saying, well, the world is moving too fast, and right, the government is usually not as much. What can you say about this?
I think the first thing is exactly as you mentioned, technology is moving much faster than regulation. I can't promise you that you won't get a lawsuit or whatever you're doing. It's about, and I don't think someone should be scared of getting a lawsuit later on and doing anything just because of that. Setting the grounds in terms of what you want to do and what you don't want to do. How do you really implement responsible data collection from day one? And there's a lot of best practices out there. It's not something that we keep to ourselves, or many others. Different NGOs and organizations are publishing different standards. And there are standards that are published that anyone can go and join. That will be sort of the ground-based in terms of what to do and how to do things. And you can pick and choose depending on the size and the scale of your company. And knowing what regulation is there now and also the development, it's critical. We see that even though, as I mentioned before, you have copyright regulation and you have privacy regulation, even just those two are so different from one geolocation to another. So Australia will have one thing, France, GDPR within the EU, the US with its own issues, all the way to California and specific privacy regulation in California. And almost on a daily basis, there will be some other state or country publishing some draft, including Israel and others and whatever. It's very hard to keep up.
So how do you keep up?
So those two areas are sort of, you take the best practices or the highest standard that there is in terms of regulation. The GDPR is considered to be one of the more robust framework, and also the CCPA from California. And set your route according to that, while also keeping an eye open or an ear open for different changes and new regulations. But you know which markets you want to attack, which markets are more relevant to you, and that should also make you more familiar with the specific regulation. When it comes to AI, for example, specifically, on one hand, you have the EU AI Act. We see also some discussions and publications in the US. If I need to say one thing about the regulation, because I have no idea how it will end up. What I do know is the fact that most of the current year's regulation, including the EU AI Act, is based on a risk perspective. So it's not one size fits all. It's about the risk, about you as the data user or the data collector needs to evaluate the risk and then implement the relevant methods in order to protect your systems or your data collection or whatever. And this is something that we've seen regulators do for some years now. Instead of saying, this is what you need to do, here's a list of 10 things, which cause different organizations to say, okay, I'm doing all that. From that point on, I can do whatever I want because I'm aligned with that. And that's not the actual case. So they switch to a more risk perspective that you need to do your own risk management to understand what are the risks, how do you counteract them, how do you mitigate those risks, and so on. And this goes back in order to do a proper risk management, you need to be very honest with yourself. You need everyone on board because there's one thing in terms of product, other in terms of legal, the third one in terms of it can be privacy or where do you keep the data that you've been collecting. So different aspects that are critical for you to really understand the risk. Once you understand the risk, then you need to see where you want to be in that range, because you can avoid the risk completely, not going into that territory. For example, when it comes to data collection, saying I'm not collecting data myself at all. I'm only buying pre-made data sets. I will make sure that those data sets are from verified companies, but when it comes to scraping, DDoS attack, harming a website, I have nothing to do with that. I'm just buying the data set. Even in that specific scenario, you need to know when that data has been collected, how it was collected.
But when you buy those data sets, aren't you essentially buying the responsibility on that or something like that, in the sense that if this data set was collected in a non-responsible way, isn't it like the problem of the person who did it, not you?
Yes and no. I give you different scenarios, because on one hand, saying I didn't know, that's why I'm not responsible, you can't claim it in these days, especially if you're a large tech company. It is expected from you to know where you get your data from, how you did it, who you're working with. Same as you validate any other vendor that you choose. Data is not different in that aspect, but it is different that you need to ask some very specific questions that someone might miss. And when procurement or legal, I get different questionnaires from our customers asking different things. Most of them don't ask the right questions because their legal team will know what to ask regarding privacy and where the data is collected and where is it stored, regarding security, everything from a SOC 2 certificate or whatever. But they hardly ever ask about how the data was scraped, what tools that you had in place in order to make sure it's being done responsibly, although there are standards out there. So I think it's definitely depending on what question you ask. But when you buy a data set, it is, you have less responsibility in terms that you don't need to proactively on a daily basis make sure that what you do is being done the right way. While when you do your own scraping, you need to monitor that. So this is a much harder task. You need people to review it. You need someone to go over it. You need a compliance system. In most cases, there's lack of resources to do that proactively on a daily basis. So it's sort of become that our services sort of an outsource, quote unquote, not legal in any way, compliance perspective for our customers.
It seems that it minimizes the risk, but not vanishing it completely.
If you want to mitigate the risk completely, don't do it. There's no other way to manage risk. You need to decide where you are in that range of different action items that you can make.
Okay, Rony, so I know I said that this is not a philosophy type of episode, but it's rarely that I have a chance to sit with someone whose entire job is to work on compliance and knows so much about it. And there are things that I wouldn't say keep me up at night, but I do worry. And for instance, is the web's going to be open at all? There's a lot of privacy issues. I keep wondering if everything that I write in, any social media is now scraped or being used. What can we do?
Those are different aspects of the same question. I think the most important part in the question is about whether the web is going to remain open. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a critical aspect that we need to tackle. And everyone needs to understand how important this is to each and every one of us on a daily basis. It's not something that AI companies are now using, and this is why we're all discussing this, and compliance and ethics and court cases and regulation. No, it's been around for a long time. And usually when we talk about, when we try to find our next flight for our vacation or anything of that sort, using one of the aggregators, Skyscanner, Kayak, and those, that information is data that's being collected from the web in order to provide you with the best prices at that specific time. Maybe you need to buy that plane ticket by using an Indonesian IP because that specific flight would be easier if you come from an Indonesian geographical area. But at the end, you as the consumer, as the customer, is benefiting from that. And this is just a sample commercial use. Think about developing a few new medicines. You need a lot of data about what is happening, different cases and so on, to really understand and develop the new evolutionary medicine that we don't know yet. And also a lot of the cases of data for good, which exist. And Data we have our own pro bono initiative called the Bright Initiative, where we support and we provide data to different organizations, academia, NGOs, and so on, with no charge. And those are being used to show bias within social media, bias within news organizations, how the information that we are getting is really biased, and to be transparent about it. But they also use the data to prevent human trafficking. You get information from social media, from different posts and ads about different services that are masking other issues related to human trafficking. and organizations are able to stop that based on that publicly available data. So getting access to data is critical. If anything, we need more data. This podcast that we are now talking will be added to the data, and someone can scrape it and learn more from it. Same with any other data. If we start blocking access to data, it will be catastrophic for all of us, and also for organizations, for-profit organizations. And I think there was a nice example of that when Musk bought Twitter and blocked it completely at day one, and scaled up the price to get the API for X, and reversed that decision very quickly because it was bad for the SEO. You couldn't find tweets and anything. Advertisers were angry because less traffic, and you need to be able to have access to data in order to be there. Probably the economics around it will change, how we do it, and so on. With AI agents and AI in general, it's a big shift, but the data still needs to be accessible, and we need to open the gates even more. And I know this is something that not discussed enough, but definitely something that we are proactively acting to do. There's a saying that about 30% of the web traffic is bots. And usually that sentence follows with bad bots or malicious and fraud. And no one says what is a bad bot, but they just say those bots are bad. They're coming for you. They're coming to get you. We need to stop them.
I think that they implicitly means that all bots are bad.
That is one thing. They usually don't mention what good things those bots are used for. And a lot of the traffic online is not identified as bots because of that technical game between domain owners and scrapers. But at the end, what we see from our experience is how vast amount of data is being used for good, used for commercial reasons that benefits us, and without going into the fair use case and those kind of things, which are legal terms that I'm putting aside just because there can be an argument if that's a fair use or not. In most cases, access to public data will be a fair use. But any attempt to block access to the web will, A, probably won't succeed, B, will have direct impact on all of us and our well-being at the end of the day.
Right. So I think that I'm always happy to finish with some sort of a good note or something like that. So I think this was the most inspiring thing that I've heard about open web in the last couple of months even. So thank you for that. And really, it's been such a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
For all the listeners, stay tuned for other episodes.